Introduction. On the cold morning of November 10, 1898, in Wilmington, North Carolina, a sinister breeze wafted through the grassy fields as a deadly massacre would soon follow. The fires were set and the torches burned with a searing intensity as the assault began a couple of miles east of the Cape Fear River, approximately 10 miles inland from the Atlantic Ocean. It was a day that North Carolina would quietly remember forever because by sunset of that very day, a confirmed 60 people had been murdered. It is estimated that this number could be as high as 300. The office of Alexander and Frank Manley's newspaper, the Daily Record, had been burned to the ground, and the local black government, elected only 2 days prior, had been overthrown by white supremacists in a violent and deadly coup d'etat. The United States of America may have seen vast amounts of violence, a lot of which had been on its own soil, but this massacre was unique. Namely, this was the only coup to ever occur on American soil. The truth behind the events that occurred on that day became lost to history for several decades. The reason for this is that the perpetrators behind the massacre wrote their own history, and they were cast as heroes in American history textbooks, while the black victims were portrayed as the instigators of the violent attacks. Nearly a century would pass before the truth of what really happened became known to the public. It's an unfortunate reality that so much time passed, but the truth behind what actually happened became lost as the years went by. The ground upon which the Daily Record stood is now a church parking lot. It has grass growing in areas where the cars don't park on a regular basis, and trees have been planted to give it more of a Wilmington feel. The Wilmington Journal, the successor to the Daily Record, is located in a beautiful traditional house right across the street from the church parking lot, but there is no indication of any of the violent atrocities that occurred in 1898. But the real tragedy of this event is still occurring today. People in North Carolina, especially conservatives, are reluctant to speak about the events of that cold, violent day in 1898, and many of them still harbor much animosity toward those events and people who want to talk about them. The real reason for this targeted animosity isn't entirely known. Nevertheless, it still creates friction and racial tension in the state. The coup and the massacre that followed at Wilmington was arguably one of the most detrimental events that could have occurred in the post-slavery era. It became the nadir in the beginning of racial politics. This made it very surprising when Dallas Woodhouse, the former executive director of the North Carolina Republican Party, tweeted in 2017 about the massacre on his Twitter account. Woodhouse decided to post his tweet in response to a tweet about the Voting Rights Act from the North Carolina Democratic Party, in which he spoke about the blatant hypocrisy behind their tweet. Woodhouse wrote, "The events of November 10, 1898, were a result of the long-range campaign strategy by Democratic Party leaders to regain political control of Wilmington, at the time the state's most populous city, and North Carolina, in the name of white supremacy." The real reason for this post could have been that Woodhouse was really interested in gaining his own political points instead of increasing awareness of the painful memory in North Carolina's history. Instead of discussing the events in person, Woodhouse opted not to have an interview when the press requested one. Even though Woodhouse's account may have been more for selfish gain than to expose truth, it is still one of the most accurate accounts that has ever been released about the events in 1898.
To keep listening to this audiobook, I've left you a link in the description so you can do it, at no cost thanks to Audible's 30-day free trial.